Hi again then guys, and welcome to another Dirtmasters Unplugged custom rally build. And for those who maybe haven't seen one of these tune builds before, this is where we take a car that doesn't have a rally version in the game, and more often than not doesn't have a real world rally equivalent either, and then we turn it into one, basically. And of course some candidates are prime examples for stuff like this, and this is one of them. It's already fairly similar to the kind of hatchbacks which you can see in the current WRC regulations, which is technically called RC1, and of course it's the Mercedes A45. It's already got the thumpy engine, relatively compact body style, and of course all-wheel drive, which makes all the difference. Now the regulations for 2018 are up to 380 horsepower, and they must weigh a minimum of 1190 kilos, but they have to weigh 1350 kilos, which is similar to a GT3 car from a couple of years ago, with both the driver and co-driver on board. So we can't get it anywhere near as low as 1190, so basically just drop it as far as you can, which unfortunately is no way near that, but there's nothing you can do about that. We're running a fraction under the limit, 380 horsepower, as you can see. I'd recommend turning traction control off. Now before we continue, this livery, which I think looks pretty good as a rally car, but of course you could go for whatever livery you want, was not created by me, but I will share it to my community page, so the creator will probably wonder why he gets a few extra likes all of a sudden, but I'll share that one for those who do want it, and of course that's up to you, because it's fictional anyway. Now as far as the tyres, we've got dirt tyres, of course. As far as suspension, I'd recommend having the ride height on 150, because rally cars, if you actually look at them, they're not overly high, but they're certainly not slammed either. The frequency I've got on 1.75, front and rear. Anti-roll we've levelled out to 5, which is a bit lower than you might expect. Compression on the dampers I've increased to 64. You could take that down to 63 if you want to though. We've got 90 on the rebound, no camber, no toe. Again, as I always say, if you want to give it some, then of course you can, but it's not entirely necessary. As far as the diff, as always, my personal preferences for diff use aren't to everyone's taste, so if you want to change it, of course you can. But I've got it relatively loose mid-corner, because of course all-wheel drive can have a tendency to understeer. That's definitely the case with this car, so we've got the lowest settings all round. If though you still find it too heavy, then you could try increasing some of those numbers, especially on the acceleration side of things. Now, the way it's currently set up, incidentally, is you need to be rough with the steering. Really turn in, give it a full lock-to-lock steering style when you're going through a corner, and basically the car will hold adrift for as long as you're turning. If you let go of the steering wheel, it straightens itself out very quickly, especially over the front end, rather than having a ton of grip at the back. So you do need to bear that in mind. It's a little bit like a front-wheel drive car in that regard. As far as the gearbox, we've got the overall ratios as close as possible, which improves acceleration, especially off the line. And then for the individual gears, we've got 2.7, 1925, 1475, 1.2, 1010, 875 and 800, with a final drive of 4.15. Now, if you do choose to give it more or less power, you might want to change those numbers, but for WRC regulations, I'd recommend just sticking to that. So that's it for the overall tune. It sits nicely in N400, as you can see. It's a bit low on the N400 side of things, but still. So, of course, all that remains is to actually take it out on the dirt to see what it can do. Now, as I mentioned, this car's all-wheel drive system, both on and off-road, does have a strong tendency to try and pull the front end back into line. But with this particular diff setup and the rest of the tuning done to it, the car is very malleable. It will do what you want for as long as you're giving it steering input. Now, with some cars, because that may sound like an obvious thing, what I just said, but with some cars, even if you let go of the steering, they'll still continue to hold the drift, and sometimes they'll overcook it, sometimes they'll straighten themselves out. With this car, the car will straighten itself out if you let go of the steering. So it's a very hands-on kind of car. Give it full lock-to-lock steering, as I said, to get the best handling out of it, to really get that turn in. Sometimes you need to even turn a little bit harder than you may need to, so it looks like you're going to overcook it, but it's got so much grip, especially over the front end, that the car will hold it. It's not difficult at all. Now, the short wheelbase, relatively wide stance, makes it very, very nicely planted on the dirt, and I would say it feels like a pretty good rally car overall. It's a shame that we don't have an actual rally version in the game, especially given that there doesn't seem to be too strong a chance of Mercedes entering rallying anytime soon, at least. Now, in terms of lap times, you're looking at, for me at least, about 2 to 5 seconds slower than my actual Group B cars in the game, like the Hyundai, the Toyota 86, the Subaru WRX even, so that's pretty good. If you think about how much less power it has, around 200 horsepower less, plus it weighs a good 200 or 300 kilos more, so to be that much slower, only at 2 to 5 seconds, that's pretty impressive actually. It shows the raw potential that this car has. So if you do decide to use it, I hope you have a ton of fun with it, potentially even win rally events. But that's it for this build. Of course, you can check out more rally builds at the end of this video, but for now, as always, thanks for watching.